first time I started thinking seriously about getting older happened when I was 24. It was right when my hairline started to get thinner, and I quickly went from a fresh-faced college kid with his life ahead of him to looking at myself in the mirror and discovering I was suddenly old. And pretty much since then, the process of getting older has not been something I've been excited about. With each passing year feeling like time was ticking away faster and faster, soon my skin would be getting wrinkles, my body getting weaker, and my window to accomplish the things I care about would get shorter and shorter. It's safe to say these anxieties around aging aren't healthy to dwell on. But what if I told you a lot of the fears we tell ourselves about getting older don't have to be true? While there's no way for us to pause or slow down time, we can dramatically slow down the speed at which our bodies age with just a few key habits. So I want to talk about what those habits are, what habits we need to avoid in our life, and at the end I want to address one change that's happening right now that could cause young people today to live much shorter lives than they otherwise should. Thankfully, it's something all of us have the ability to change in our own lives, so let's get started. In her book True Age, Yale pathologist Dr. Morgan Levine argues that rather than looking at our chronological age, which is how many years you've been alive, we should instead focus our attention on our biological age, which tracks the rate at which our bodies are changing and breaking down over time. It sounds complicated to track all this information, but everything you need can be found in a simple blood test, and by tracking these changes, it's possible to enjoy a full year of life while our biological age barely gets older. Recently, tech millionaire Brian Johnson has gotten a lot of attention for taking this concept to the extreme, spending $2 million a year to reverse his own aging. But before Brian began his quest for the fountain of youth, there have been countless examples of people who successfully reduced their biological age decades without spending a $2 million price tag to do it. So, hoping to find my own affordable way to biohack my aging, I read through Dr. Levine's book and discovered I had a number of habits that might be causing me to age faster than I originally thought. When it comes to slowing down our biological age, the key is to increase our capacity for resilience. If we push ourselves outside our comfort zone, our body's response is to go into a mode where it restores and repairs itself. This repeated cycle of stress and response tend to cause our biological age to flatline, so our body can remain fit and ready to take on whatever challenge comes its way. Easily the most studied approach for creating a stress and response cycle to slow down our aging can be achieved through our diet, by changing how much we eat, when we eat, or just what foods we eat. Researchers first found a link between diet and longevity when they began testing subjects on calorie-restricted diets. The subjects were still getting the levels of nutrition they needed, but they were doing so in a 20% calorie deficit until their bodies reached the low end of their ideal weight. I think this is probably the option most of us would rather not implement. As someone who spent a decent amount of time trying to build muscle, the prospect of cutting until I'm 15 pounds lighter and below 140 pounds, I'll just die then. Death doesn't sound bad. Fortunately, calorie restriction is not the only option for extending our life, as follow-up studies have begun to find nearly identical benefits to calorie-restricted diets achieved through time-restricted eating or fasting. Placing a limit on when you can eat seems to create the same stress and response researchers found when they studied calorie-restricted diets. Except with time-restricted eating, you don't need to drastically drop weight, and you only need to exert willpower through a limited window of time. One study that tracked subjects through 6 months of time-restricted eating found they actually tested 2.5 years younger when they finished the program, which makes this one of the few studies that didn't just pause aging, but actually reversed it. And the final way to slow down aging through diet is by reevaluating what foods you actually eat. And if you're guessing the answer is to avoid the usual deep-fried and sugary foods, then you're not wrong. But even some of the foods we generally consider healthy may not be the best choice if you're dieting with the goal of extending your life. I was particularly sad to find out that diets overly reliant on animal protein have been linked to faster rates of aging compared to plant-based or Mediterranean diets. While a diet that relies heavily on animal protein can be great for building muscle or losing weight, opting for a plant-based protein source like quinoa, lentils, or beans can be a great substitute if you want to swap out some of your weekly meat while still training to build size. So today I am making a chili recipe, and while this usually goes with ground turkey, I am swapping in a plant-based substitute. I like to make this meal probably once a week because once it is prepped and ready, it is good for like 5 to 6 meals. So I really hope making this change doesn't just mess the whole thing up. While that's cooking, I should talk about the second way we can apply short-term stress to our lives in order to slow down the effects of Father Time, and that is through exercise.
That's right, sucker. No pain, no gain. If you want to live longer, then you need to work harder. Shit. When When that alarm clock goes at 2 a.m., that means it's your time to go running, princess. No excuses, no quit, no fun.
All right, let's back up a bit. Like with diet, the key to using exercise to improve longevity is through moderation. Finding the workouts that's challenging enough to push your body out of its comfort zone without going so hard that you take away from your ability to recover. There are no bonus points for overtraining. In fact, when researchers studied the aging patterns of ultramarathon runners, they found training at such extreme levels actually caused them to age faster than a casual runner who was only jogging 3 to 4 times each week. Training for longevity is all about finding that sweet spot where you are pushing yourself, but not too hard. And one of the best programs researchers have found for striking this balance is through high intensity interval training, or HIIT. With HIIT, the goal is to push yourself as hard as possible for short bursts. Then you take a break to let your heart settle back to about 60% of its capacity. Once your heart rate has reached this level, you jump back into training again, going as hard as you possibly can. Pairing HIIT with some form of resistance exercise will cover the 2 biggest targets for long-term health, which is cardio and strength. And if you're looking for a smart way to improve in both of these areas, then you will really want to check out the sponsor of this video, Copilot. So I have been working with Copilot for over 2.5 years now, and it has easily been one of the most transformative experiences I've had since I started getting serious about my own training and health. Copilot pairs you with a personal trainer who is there to help you achieve whatever fitness goals you're working toward. Their trainers have helped me get the best physique of my life, improve my vertical jump, reduce knee pain when I play sports, but most importantly, they've helped me build a routine that keeps me consistent with my workouts all year round. My trainer Devin is always available if I need to ask for advice on an exercise or schedule a call to talk through the latest challenge I'm working toward. 75% of Copilot clients continue to work out after their first 100 days, which means their approach is 9 times more effective for getting people to stick to their goals. Their trainers are able to add value to your workouts if you're someone who's been working out for years or looking to take the first step in your fitness journey. One benefit of working with Copilot for as long as I have is I've actually seen friends of mine and people in our audience who have started working with Copilot as well and have their own stories of how much Copilot and their team has helped them build healthy habits they can stick with long term. So I know their approach doesn't just work for me, it's worked for so many people. If you would like to give Copilot a try for yourself, click the link in our description for a free trial with your own expert fitness and health coach and start building your own healthy habits today. If we know how to slow down aging through the right diet and exercise, what are the areas of life that will cause our internal clock to tick faster, causing us to grow old ahead of our chronological age? And I'm leaving out the obvious things like smoking or binge drinking because you probably already know that. But if the key to slowing down aging is to build up resilience through moderate stress, it may seem counterintuitive that the day-to-day stress in our lives actually speeds up our biological clock quite a bit. Each time we feel anxious about work, stressed over finances, or just feel like there aren't enough hours in the day, our body ramps up production of cortisol, which triggers a fight or flight response. While cortisol is not a bad thing in and of itself, the problem comes when cortisol production remains active through the course of the day, triggered by a never-ending supply of text and email alerts, social commitments, and worrying that your new chili won't taste as good without the meat. Turns out it actually tasted really good though. Dr. Levine argues that even though our physical needs for shelter and food are much more stable today, we live in a time that actually causes much higher levels of daily stress. This causes us to get worse sleep and wears down our immune system, so we're more susceptible to things like sickness and disease. And unlike diet and exercise, reducing our stress isn't as easy as opting to buy different foods at the store or carving out 30 minutes to squeeze in a workout, as typically the most stressful situations in our lives come from things that feel out of our control. But that doesn't mean we're helpless to the effects of stress. Researchers at Stanford found that just changing the way we view stress in our life can transform how it affects our health and performance. People who embrace the positive sides of stress as something that gives them energy and motivates them to focus, those people actually performed better and saw positive health effects compared to those who viewed stress solely as a negative that needed to be avoided or coped with. A second key for avoiding the worst impacts of stress comes from fostering a mindset that emphasizes our ability to succeed in spite of difficult circumstance, and a willingness to reach out to others before we feel like we're overwhelmed and run down. This, I think, runs into a much larger point affecting young people today, which is our sharp decrease in social connection and a rise in loneliness. This is a bad trend both for our mental and physical health, as maintaining strong social relationships is key not just for a longer life, but a more fulfilling and healthier one. But today, most of us spend more time alone than at any other point in modern history. Less time with families, less time at social functions, and a lot less time hanging out with our friends, to the point where a recent survey found 1 in 4 millennials reported having 0 close friends. And I don't have easy answers. This is obviously an issue caused by a number of factors, from technology to modern work culture to the way cities can foster isolation even when you're surrounded by people. And just on a more personal note, I'm someone who moved to a new city at the start of lockdowns, and I found this period of my life to be one of the most difficult for building new connections and finding those close friendships. So what can we do now that I've established I have no credibility to give advice? Well, one thing I've had to come to terms with is that building and maintaining friendships is something that requires effort just like anything else in life. And if I was prioritizing so much of my time working, then using my free time to work out or read, at some point it wasn't a mystery why my social calendar wasn't filling up. While systemic changes are a factor causing our loneliness, if we constantly choose to spend time by ourselves, our loneliness will at least partially become a result of our choices. I also think in the age of social media, we can overestimate how much time other people are sharing with friends, which can in turn make us feel even more isolated. But while there's no ideal number of friends, the consensus seems to be most people only maintain 3 to 6 close relationships. So if you are someone who feels like you do not have enough friends, you only need a small handful of meaningful connections for you to have a rich and socially fulfilling life. I'm not saying building those connections is inherently easy, but just starting with 1 or 2 means you're already halfway there. And for all of us, I think having those relationships won't just help us live longer, but it'll make the time we have much more enjoyable as well.
How does it feel?
After reading Dr. Levine's book, I think my biggest takeaway is the power of small changes. You don't need to work out 6 hours a day or spend millions of dollars to slow the effects of aging. We can make meaningful changes to live longer and healthier by finding the habits that work for your life and schedule. Don't let stress get you down, and don't freak out next time you blow out the candles. Thank you again to Copilot for sponsoring this video. Check them out in the link below, and thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one.